Hello, my name is Patrick and this is Prep Mindful, your daily video practice in mindful test prep. And today I wanted to think a little bit about what makes junior year so stressful. I remember entering high school as a freshman, and even in the orientation speeches then, the idea of junior year being this incredible mountain that would surely slay you was in the air, and I remember thinking, what the heck could happen that would be so bad? And then junior year came, and I found out, and it was. But in my time since then, I've been able to reflect a little bit, and I've worked with hundreds of juniors, and I've come up with a few ideas that I think can help to contextualize that stress and anxiety and hopefully put us in a better place with it. Now, I want to be clear about one thing. When I was a sophomore in high school, I didn't do all my homework. I could have. I know that the time existed, but every now and then, I would make an executive decision that no, I was going to play poker at Subway sandwiches or something like that, right? I was going to hang out with my friends or I was going to watch some basketball game on TV. In any case, I knew that if I had prioritized at the absolute top of my list was finishing all my homework, I could have done it, right? And then junior year came around, and because I had a bit more responsibility with extracurriculars and this intense course load and so much homework, all of a sudden, the demands that were being made on my time exceeded the hours in the day. I was no longer going to be able to do everything, even if it had been my number one priority. And that was really stressful for me because I had considered myself an achiever. I didn't like being unprepared when I went to class. That kind of stressed me out. And so I was having a really difficult time juggling all of these responsibilities and assignments and things like that. And then all of a sudden, on top of that, everyone in my life was suddenly very interested in how I was doing. And there was this specter of the future, right? I could feel that my parents were suddenly a bit more interested in how my tests were going and my report cards. And even my teachers would be like, well, is this the kind of student you're going to be? How's that going to look on an application? And that sort of thing. And I remember at the time thinking, like, can everybody just chill the F out, right? I'm freaking out anyway. And so it was difficult because now my actions seemed to have this weight behind them, right? That like this was affecting the future. That hadn't really been there sophomore year. And on top of that, I wasn't in a position, it seemed, to be able to do the things very well that were in front of me. And so I didn't feel so hot. And I didn't feel so high on myself, right? But I think this is a helpful way to think about all of this stress that the people around you may be putting on you junior year, okay? Now, I don't have any children, but if I did, I would imagine I would be terrified. Not of the kids themselves, unless they did that thing where like the baby's head turns all the way around 180 degrees, because that is like, no thank you. But I don't think real babies do that. Or if they do, the cover up has been massively successful. In any case, let's say you have a child and then you go home from the hospital and you have no idea what you're doing. And yeah, you probably read books and you probably watched the people around you raise their children. But on that first night, I don't know how I would sleep a wink, right? I would be going over to check that the baby was still breathing every 10 seconds. And there's this incredible responsibility, right? You have to keep this child alive. And, socially, you should probably like help make it a good person so that everybody's sort of happy that this child is alive and that this person existed, right? But number one priority is like keep the child alive and then, hopefully teach them how to read and think for themselves and be compassionate and all that. But it's terrifying because it's a very high stakes job, but you have no idea what you're doing. And the child starts to grow. At some point, its skull becomes just one bone instead of this like continental shifting mass of bones. I don't really know much about that, but it causes me anxiety when I pick up babies. Anyway, it grows and it'll recognize your face and it can smile at you, and that's crazy, right? And then it'll find things funny, sometimes not even things that you understand, right? It develops its own sense of humor. And then it grows up and it starts walking around, and that's an entire other basket of dangers to worry about and all that. And then suddenly it's going off to school and it's interacting with other kids, and I'm sure in the back of your mind you're like, that's the best kid, because like that's my kid, right? But then you will experience some evidence that your kid is not the best kid, and I'm sure that that's difficult to deal with. And then they grow up a bit more and they have homework and stuff, and you can see them emulating the way that you approach things that you have to do, and that feels great but kind of scary in its own way, because who the heck are you? And then it grows up a bit more, it becomes a preteen, and it's thinking about, trying things that are scary, and kids are going to be kids, but not my kid, right? And that sort of thing happens, and it becomes a teenager, and it wants a bit more independence, and sometimes it'll decide it doesn't like you, which is hilarious, because like, I made you. It'll come home with pieces of information that you didn't know, right? It'll teach you things, and it's like, what? Get out of town. I remember when you were just a continental shifting plate of parts of skull with, gross sausage body under it. I love babies. And then as high school draws to an end, college arises, okay? And these standardized tests are part of it. And I think it would be very difficult as a parent to not have a lot of emotion wrapped up in that, right? You went home from the hospital, you had no idea what you were doing, you tried your best for 17, 18 years, and now some college, some board of admissions is going to decide whether or not you did a good enough job for your child to go to that college. And that can feel like, hey, there's a lot riding on that. And this test score is some number that represents something like the likelihood that a college would want your child to be there. And that can feel like a thumbs up or thumbs down on the job that you did as a parent. So it's almost like cramming for a test, right? You know that the test is coming up and you maybe skim over your book a little bit, but your heart's not in it. And then the night before, aka junior year, all of a sudden you're cramming all your parenting in at one time, being like, oh my God, I need to make sure that you're ready and that you're not going to let us all down here. And it's probably not the most helpful thing to do, but it's difficult to get over that impulse to try to do as much as you can to help so that you're sending out your child into the world with the best chance that you could possibly give them. And that's one of the important things to think about. Your parents, your teachers, the people around you, they all have expectations of you. And those expectations are probably positive. They probably want things to go well for you. And that's why they seem so invested and so stressed and so anxious about how this whole process goes. If there was no hope, if they were convinced that you were going to be a failure and that no college would want you, well, it wouldn't be very stressful, but it would be sad, right? So all of these probing questions about how's your prep doing? Do you want to do this? Shouldn't you sign up for the summer program? All of that is predicated on the idea that you can succeed and that things can go well for you and that they want that outcome to be as likely as possible, right? They're trying to help in ways that are maybe not the most helpful, but they're understandable. It is the potential that the people around you see that makes them want more for you, right? And that's what makes them put on this anxious badgering and this stress and this, well, is this how you want the future to be? Because they know that there's a future with you in it that is beautiful. They've seen that vision. They've been imagining that since the moment you were born. And now it feels like it's all coming to a head. And that's really difficult to be around. And it's difficult to be, the subject of all of that scrutiny. But if you keep in mind that all of that stress is there because you have potential, because there is a future that you can build that people would be proud of, maybe that helps to reduce the anxiety a little bit and make things a bit less stressful. I remember right after I graduated college, somebody sharing that the secret of adulthood is finding out that nobody has any idea what they're doing. And I think that's inevitably true about parenting, especially for a first child. So if you can practice that instant forgiveness of your parents for all of the ways in which they stress you out and all of the unnecessary worry that they pour on you, if you can forgive them for that and see that it comes from a place of belief and of hope and ultimately of love, then it may be easier to be around and easier for you to manage. In any case, it's probably a better way to see things than everybody shut up now and leave me alone in my room, which is something that I definitely had my fair share of during junior year. I hope that helps to think about. My name is Patrick, and this has been Prep Mindful.